Well, would you look at that? It's springtime. The weather's getting nice. All of the flowers and plants are coming back. It's getting nice outside again. But it's time to grab ourselves a nice hot cup of cocoa, fall under some blankets, and get some fall flavors. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome, my fellow nerds, back to Nerd In, or if you're brand new here, thank you so much for tuning in. I am Christian, and I'll be your host on this evening of Totally Bored, and tonight we are going to be reviewing our first ever expansion on Nerd In, Honey Buzz Fall Flavors. I will preface, this is not a standalone expansion. You do need the base game of Honey Buzz to be able to play this, but I'm going to be breaking down what this adds to the base game, whether it's worth it, and giving my overall thoughts on it. Now, with the way this expansion works, I'm going to be having to do this review a little bit differently than how I do my standard ones. Normally, I go through an overview of the game, give you my thoughts on the things that I don't like about it, go over the things that I do like, and then give final thoughts before, ending the review. In this case, with this expansion, there is 5 new modules to add to Honey Buzz, so I'm going to talk about each one separately, giving my thoughts on each separately as well, and then do a finishing, overarching thoughts on all of them just in general, and maybe like in certain combinations. So, let's go ahead and get started with this. We will still be beginning with the overview to give you some insight into what each module does and adds to the game, so that way you are fully understanding. And now, I will also preface this video by saying, yes, I have the deluxe version, and yes, I did get the Cornucopia mini expansion with this. I am not going to be taking either of those into account. I am just a glutton for all of the nice bits and bobs. So, of course, I have the deluxe stuff, and again, this was also a birthday present to me. But I would have bought it either way, so we can disregard that part. But as far as between deluxe and retail, I'm not really going to go too deep into those. I might give a little bit of a touch-up on it at the end, because with Honey Buzz, or with Elf Creek Games at least, that I've seen so far, when they give you a deluxe edition, they still give you the retail edition pieces. So I do have insight on those as well. So let's go ahead and dive into the review and get this thing cooking, I suppose. So with any modular system, normally you can kind of mix and match and pick and choose what all you want to throw in there. And for the most part, there is no exception to that with this expansion. Every module you can play independently, you can play it with other modules, mix and match however you like these 5 modules. Except for one. There is one complete exception. This one can only either be played on its own or with another module. All the other modules, if you play with any of those, this one has to be included. And I am, of course, talking about the Sunset Track. So this actually is a new way to determine the end game. If you remember in base Honey Buzz, which if you haven't seen that review yet, I did do one on the channel. You can see that in the card right up there. Definitely watch that before you get into this review any further. So anyways, with the Sunset Track, normally in the base game, the game ends either when 2 of the 3 order stacks are empty, or when 4 of the 5 resources reach their lowest value. In Fall Flavors, they give us a new way to do that with this Sunset Track. So it starts at the top left, and as certain events happen, it will trigger it to move down until eventually it hits the last space and the game ends immediately. You can literally add this to just base Honey Buzz if you want to have a better way to see when the end of the game is coming. That was a complaint my dad had with Honey Buzz, just the base game, is that he felt like the game was over too quickly and he couldn't always read when it was going to happen. So having this indicator literally in front of you, you still don't know exactly when it's going to happen, but it gives you a much clearer idea of when that is going to occur. And now the events that trigger this, they do have events based on the base game, as well as specific ones for the modules, which you just ignore if those modules aren't in play. So let me go over this Sunset event card here, because they do give you a reference, which is very handy. So you will move this Sun Tracker down 2 spaces on this track every time an order stack becomes empty. So if you empty all 3 order stacks, that will immediately end the game. You can also lower it by 1 for a resource reaching the lowest value. So every time a resource hits its lowest value on the market, this Sunset Tracker will go down. Anytime the last Nectar tile is collected, which is rare, but there are certain game states where if players are manufacturing it, it will happen and it will force the Sunset Tracker to go down. When a Hive tile stack becomes empty, also pretty rare, because you'll usually, if that, like, someone's just targeting a single tile stack, it's going to get crowded, and it's going to take them a while to actually get through it. But that is an option. That is a potential for a Hive tile stack to become empty and reduce this by 1. Also, the last Nectar cap is claimed. We will get into that later. And the Festival board becomes full. Also, something we will get into later. Those are both relevant to other modules in this. So like I said, this is something that can just be used with base Honeybuzz, but if you play any of these other modules in any combination, this has to be involved. You cannot play one of these modules without this Sunset Tracker, just for balancing reasons, and it will become clearer as we get into more of these modules why that is. Because some of these modules are actually insane. So that's really it for that one. I'm still going to reserve my thoughts until the actual review portion of this, so we'll go through all of these first and then get into my thoughts. So there is the Sunset Tracker. So now for quite possibly definitely the biggest module within this expansion is the Fall Fruits expansion. So you'll see here that the entire, or like half of the board that you use in Honeybuzz is now different. Instead of using nectar, you now get fall fruit, being apples, pumpkins, and pears, and you will be able to gain these in place of pollen. In the base game, normally you would get pollen whenever you landed on a space on the forage board where you couldn't collect a tile, whether it be there was no tile there or the tile didn't fit into your space. Now with fall fruit, you get these circle tokens, which will go slapped out onto the board randomly, depending on how many players you have. And if your forager token is ever next to any of these fruits, you are able to collect one of those instead of a tile. You actually get the option now, and you will be able to collect a fruit based on which ones you're adjacent to. You'll only get one at a time, but if you're adjacent to multiple, you'll get more options to pick from. You'll also notice that now it is no longer a normal grid for moving on. You actually get to move in 6 directions. Now, theoretically, because of course you can't move over these fruit tokens, you just go around them. So more often than not, you still only get like 4 or 5 different ways you can move. In some cases, you only get 3 directions. But the grid layout is much different now, and you can maneuver around it a lot differently. And of course, now you have the option to move, not take a tile, and instead gain a fruit. And the importance of that is that they have changed the order cards to now be fruit instead of pollen. And since you have 3 different types of fruit, the types do actually matter. As you'll see on the market track on the right there, fruit does operate the same as pollen for moving its value, but the values that they actually sell for at market are static. Pumpkins are always worth 4 coins, pears always 3, and apples always worth 2, as denoted towards the bottom. But the fruit value does still start at the top and then moves its way down so that once it hits its lowest value, that will trigger the sunset. So that is still something to be aware of. The values for them never change, except for on the track just to declare when the end of the game is, essentially. So on top of modifying the order cards to be for specific fruits instead of just pollen, as well as giving a different value on the market and a different foraging board, there's actually an extra stack of order cards now on this board as well. And these are the fruit order cards. They center around the fruit. In some cases, they're more generic, requiring any fruit. Sometimes they get more specific and require either a pear, an apple, or a pumpkin, as well as your normal honey to be able to complete that order. These orders don't score as high as like the large orders do in the normal stacks. They score about what a small order would. But when you complete one of these orders, you'll notice that right below it, you get the decree action, which means that anytime you complete a fruit order, you get to take any of the other 5 actions that you want. You can just gain 5 coins, you can go to market again, you can produce, you can forage, you can make a baby bee. You get the option to do any of those, which is just fantastic. And actually, with some of these modules, some of those other actions get even more impactful. Again, more that we will delve into later. This personally is probably my favorite module so far, just because it changes the whole board. It really brings you into that fall theme, and it just gives you so many more new things that you can do, having that extra way to get the decree action without having to take a tile. Also having just different ways to maneuver around the board and different resources to collect. And along with the fruit, you also get new goal cards. So with these modules, I haven't found any full clarification on it, but as far as I can tell, anytime you do one of these modules, you can add in one of the goal cards associated with it. For Fall Fruit, in solo mode, there is only 2 contest cards, so you basically just deal one of these out. But as far as I can tell in the rules, there's no clarification. These are in addition to the 3 contests that you have in base Honey Buzz. I didn't see anywhere that the threshold changes where you have to hit a minimum point requirement on the contest cards to win and then do your high score. I didn't see any changes to that, so I'm pretty sure those are all still the same. So you're just getting extra things to be able to work towards to get more points. And with the fruit, you have the 2 options you have for solo are total fruit orders and total unsold fruit. So those are only solo contest cards. They don't actually have multiplayer contest cards for fruit. So if you're a solo player like I am, this one does get really nice just because of the fact that it just gives you an extra goal to work towards that you can basically just do for free. It's really cool, actually. I quite like it. And that's about the gist of it for Fall Fruit. So you don't really get as many extra ways to get points aside from having the extra stack of order cards, which can run empty and end the game faster. But it gives you the decree action, and it still gives you some points, which I think is well worth it. And of course, you can just hoard up a bunch of fruit. Even when the value starts dipping lower, you can still basically rest assured that its value is the same. Kind of like gold in a sense. You know its value is going to stay the same. It'll just change based on what else is around it, but it's still technically the same value. So that is Fall Fruit. Let's go ahead and move on to the 3rd module of this expansion. So the next module I want to talk about here is the Nectar Caps. Probably the most straightforward module in this entire expansion, but one that is still quite impactful. So there are 10 total tiles here, or caps as they're obviously referred to, that will give you an extra way to get points at the end of the game. And the way you're going to do this is by using these Nectar Caps and putting them over your Nectar tiles. A couple of things happen when you do this. So when you put a Nectar Cap on a Nectar tile, if there's any honey on it whatsoever, it just gets discarded. You don't get to use that honey anymore. But you get to preserve that nectar for the winter, which means that now that tile is going to be worth points at the end of the game, but you can also no longer produce honey on it for the remainder of the game. Once you place one of these caps, it's just there for good. And these values range from 12 all the way down to 5, only being one of each Nectar Cap value, except for the 5 has 3 in total. So aside from these just being extra points, they do provide a lot more. It's also an additional contest in multiplayer to try to get these trophy tokens. The players who basically preserve the most nectar over the winter get to be victors of this contest. Now, in a 2 and 3 player game, I believe, you only get the 5-point trophy, whereas in 4 players, you do get the 10 and the 5 for 1st and 2nd place, respectively. And the way you get these trophies is based on who has the most Nectar Caps. So even if I had the highest value of Nectar Caps, if I only have 3 and someone else has 4, they would be able to win the 1st place trophy if we're in a high enough player count. And then the 5-point one gets awarded to 2nd place, or in a lower player count, the 5 gets awarded to whoever has the most. In solo mode, these trophies are non-existent. You instead get more solo contest cards to play with these, which are quite nice. But with these solo contest cards specifically, they will give you negative points at the end of the game. So you can get points off of these still by achieving their goals, but just naturally, 2 of them make you lose 20 points, and the 3rd makes you lose 25. So essentially, you really have to make up what you lose from these cards by beating them, but they only award you 10 points at most, so you're losing more than you're gaining off of these, but it's still an extra thing that you have to work towards. Thankfully, the points from these do still count to the contest cards, or the contest points as far as I can tell from the rules, so that is still nice at least. So essentially, these Nectar Caps just boil down to giving players extra points at the end of the game. Whether it's for multiplayer or solo mode, they will still award you extra points in the long run. Now, the way you obtain these Nectar Caps is, well, first you need to have some nectar on your board to be able to place these on. You can't just place it on an empty cell and call it a day. You actually have to have a nectar tile there, which means you had to build the cell and forage to grab a nectar tile, put it in there, and then you can cap it where you can no longer use it for the rest of the game, but it is worth points. And the way you get that is by taking the accounting action, which normally in the base game, all it does is just give you 5 coins. Just free 5 coins right away. You get to use it to help forage or just hold on to it for the end of the game, however you want to go with that. Now, this gives that action an additional purpose where you can instead take the highest value nectar cap, plop it on one of your nectar, and get those points at the end of the game. Very handy. It gives a lot more versatility to the action and a lot more reason to pick it over the other 4 that are available. Well, 5 technically, but one of them just becomes one of the other actions, so you get where I'm going here. So, I really do appreciate that module, again, for its simplicity, but for the amount of things that it actually provides to the game and way it changes up some of our strategies. Because now it makes one of those previously obsolete actions very useful. And the 4th module that we have here, let me just go ahead and pull it all out, is the Autumn Leaves. So now we actually get more variation to the tiles that are in our tile stacks. All of these on here are the same as the base game tiles, except for one key difference. They now have leaves on them, and I do have the foil versions, but of course there are the standard versions as well, which aren't as pretty, but I like the pretty ones. So what these do is they essentially give you set collection. They give you a set collection module to this game. You're pretty much trying to grab as many of certain types of leaves as you can, but they will only pop up randomly on the tile stacks, and for each tile type that there is, there's only actually 6 leaf tiles, which get mixed in with the base game. You substitute these in for 6 of each tile. So for the Baby Bee, the Decree, and the Accounting action, you're still going to have 3 normal tiles in each of those piles, and then the other 3 tiles will have 6 of each. So basically there's 50% of leaves in the last 3 tile types, and in the first 3 it's 2/3. So you are playing a little bit of a gambling game because you don't always know when the exact leaf that you want is going to come up. And there are some of these that have double leaves on them too, which could really help out. So for solo mode, you don't get to use these cards, but there are foliage cards in here, and this is the only module in this expansion that actually has essentially multiplayer goal cards. They're not listed as contest cards, but they basically are, and they just are a way for you to get extra points. Like the first one that I have here is adjacent to matching leaves, you get 2 points per. So if you have 2 of the same leaves touching each other or adjacent to each other, that's an extra 2 points. And a lot of these are like that. Full sets of leaves, you can get 1 point per leaf and 5 per set. Pairs and singles of leaves, so every pair that you have is 5 points and every single you have is 2. Most leaves of each type, so the player with the most of each type of leaves will get different points, and so on and so forth. So these give extra objectives based on these, and it's just a set collection, but the type of set collection varies depending on the foliage card that is in play to give players extra points. Now, with the solo mode version of this, instead of getting any of these foliage cards, which there's a decent stack of them here for some good variability, which I quite appreciate, we get a few solo contest cards. And these are not too bad. One of them is just for having total leaves. If you get 21 or more, that's your max points. If you total full sets of leaves, so you want to get a bunch of sets of them. And then the second most common type of leaves, which is a really tough one. Basically, you have to get 2 leaves, like as many of those as you can to get the most points. So those are extra set collection as well, just for solo player. You only get 3 options because, again, you don't get to play with the foliage cards, which is kind of a shame, but I get it because the foliage cards were definitely designed for multiplayer. But really, that's the majority of it, is basically you have extra decisions to make when deciding which tile you're going to beeline for, because if there's a certain action you want, but it doesn't have the leaf that you need, and an action that you're not ready to use has a leaf that you want, you really have to plan out a lot more how you're going to navigate that, and it does add some very interesting choices that I do quite appreciate as well. In the solo mode, the drones do actually mess with the tile stacks as well. Whichever space that they land on, it just takes the top tile and moves it to the bottom. So it does help you cycle through, but sometimes it doesn't help you. So there is that. So I quite appreciate that module. Again, pretty simple and straightforward. Another way to get points, another way to change how you play the game. All of these really approach the base game of Honey Buzz quite well and modify just enough to make you play differently, but not really to feel like it's a whole new game, which is such a nice touch. So, moving on to our final module here, and definitely a pretty nice one, I would say, is the Harvest Festival module. So now this one has a new board as well that's double-sided. This is in addition to the game, not replacing any parts of it. And what this does is it adds in toast cards. It basically means that now you can retire your workers. At the end of any of your turns, if you have a worker left over in your supply and it wouldn't cause you to not have any workers active that you wouldn't be able to recall or use on a later turn, if you have a spare worker, you can retire it and either have it work one last time or give it a toast and send it on its way. So these toast cards are all just like immediate point values that will give you points based on the situation that you have at the moment. So let me just pull a random one here. This one gives you 2 points per order that you have. So for every order that you've completed up until this point, it will give you an extra 2 points if you decide to toast. However, if you decide to have them work one last time, that worker will get the decree action. So it's another way to get decree actions to speed up your process and get actions done that maybe you missed out on because you didn't get to a tile that you needed. So basically you get the option of either working a little bit more and getting more actions out of it, but losing a worker to pay that cost, or you're losing a worker to give you more points and do more things. Like this one gives you a coin per 5 coins that you have, so the rich just get richer with that one. I mean, really, these are just kind of ways to, you can either use them as a catch-up mechanism or as a leave you in the dust mechanism. I do think they're quite fine though, because some of these goals aren't going to be, or these toasts anyways, aren't going to be very impactful early game, but you also don't want to let them sit around too long because one of your opponents might just snap in and snag it away from you. And that's every turn you have the option to do that, but of course, there's only a certain number of toast cards that are going to be on the board depending on the player count, and a certain number of slots for retired workers. For 1 to 2 players, you only get 4 toast cards and 8 slots to retire workers at. For 3 to 4, you only get, 3 players you get 5 cards, 4 players you get all 6. And then you have a lot more retire worker slots down there. But all the actions are still the same. And again, there's no multiplayer contest for these, but there are solo contests. It's like having the most toast cards or things like that. On top of, obviously, the toast just giving you points to begin with, which is pretty nice. There is an advanced mode to this as well that comes with these extra tokens. And I believe these actually came out of the Cornucopia expansion. Yeah, so these are the 30 bonus tokens that came out of the Cornucopia expansions. Basically, you draw these at random depending on your player count and how many worker slots are on the festival board. You got to take each of these tokens and just randomly put them onto each space. So then when you retire a worker, you now choose which one you want to go for, because you will get to grab that bonus token and also get your normal stuff there. So like right now I have a few out here that have leaves on them if I'm playing with the leaf module. I have one that allows me to make a baby bee, one that allows me to forage, one that's just worth 5 points, and then 2 that are like 2 and 3 value nectar caps. So you basically it gives you extra nectar caps, but they're just lower value, so it can help for certain goals. But yeah, I think it's actually quite neat that they added these in here. Obviously, they are part of the Cornucopia expansion, and I haven't played with them yet. But I do think the concept in general is very good. They have different tokens for all of the modules in here, as well as just the base stuff. So if you're not playing with any of the other modules, you don't have to worry about those. But just a nice little extra bonus there. So that is all 5 modules of Honey Buzz Fall Flavors. So it's going to be kind of hard to do a rating for each one separately, so I'm going to kind of rank them in order and give like an overall view on all of them. So in last place, my least favorite one, I think I would have to say, is Autumn Leaves, and not because I dislike it, just because it's set collection's not my favorite thing ever, and sometimes I forget to pay attention to it, so that I end up falling behind because I don't grab the pieces I need to go for it. I just get too laser focused on the actions that I'm going for. Overall, I still think it's really cool, though, and it adds this nice extra flair to your hives, because now, especially if you're like me and you have the shiny versions, you have all of these beautiful leaves spread out throughout your hive, and it just gives it this beautiful aesthetic. It just feels like one that's a little bit too hard to focus on for me, but I do still enjoy it. Following that one is honestly, it's probably probably the Harvest Festival. I mean, it's a really cool module, and it's really hard to put it this low. I just feel like it adds in a lot more resource management, because now you're really having to manage your workers, and it does kind of get a little bit awkward, but there are some times when it's just really nice for me, it just feels bad in solo play because when I'm using the drone dice, I always hit the don't move roll, which ends up hurting me anyways because it's always on the tiles I want. But every time you hit the don't move, it activates this worker die, and it somehow always hits a toast card. So, of course, when I have the objective to get the most toast cards, I get 2 of them sniped out right away before I can even touch them, and it's like, well, now I just don't get that. It's impossible, but overall, still a really good module. I'm not the biggest fan of how the drone dice, or how the drones play with this. I don't use the drone cards, so that could be very different. Honestly, I might have to try that, but I just like the dice too much. It just makes it a lot more tense, I think, but still a really good module. I can't say anything bad about it. It's just lower on this list because right behind that is the Nectar Caps, because again, it's so simple, it's so small, such a minor change to the game, but it does so much to really change how I think about what I'm doing. And it makes me realize that sometimes I can just grab the nectar that I don't need because I have a space open for it, and now I have a reason to use it, even if it's not actually producing honey. So I quite enjoy that little variation to it. Of course, with the multiplayer, having the trophies, giving you an extra goal to work towards as well is also really nice. And of course, these trophies are wood, so they just feel amazing. But that is my number 3 pick. Now, my number 2 pick, this one's really a toss-up with the 2 that I have left, and I think, as much as I hate it to be, I think it kind of has to be the Fall Fruit module as my second place here. And this adds so much to the game that it's like, no, I'm going to go back on it. It's the Sunset Marker. The Sunset Tracker is my second favorite module from this expansion, because again, it can be played with base Honey Buzz, but if any of these other modules are in play, this has to be played with it. But I really appreciate being able to see the end of the game so much more visually, and it helps with a lot of things, and I gotta appreciate it. Again, it's another really simple thing. It's only a 3-piece module, literally a card, a token, and a little bit of cardboard, and that's a whole module right there. But what it does for the game, it's a quality of life change that probably should have been in the base game, but I also can't fault them for it not being in the base game because the end of game was so clear, whereas these modules kind of muddy it up a little bit, and this really just shines some light on it, pun intended. And I appreciate everything that the Sunset Tracker does. And of course, my favorite one, now that I've gone back on it, is the Fall Fruits modules, because it literally changes an entire board that you're already playing with. Adding the extra stack of order cards is really, really nice. Having this different layout for all of the foraging is spectacular. Changing the market up just enough, because it also adds in new names for all of the honey that you're using initially. Now they're flowers, and then you have, of course, your fruit on the end of the market there. The aesthetic of this is just gorgeous. It really improves the vibe of the game and gives you that fall feeling. But just like in base Honey Buzz, you get an advanced module of this as well. You can play with the tiles hidden if you really want that increased level of difficulty. And now instead of gaining pollen when you hit a tile that you don't need or that you can't take, you now get a fruit. I think this is so neat. And of course, all of the fruit are on the outside of this now, so it's more random. And I don't know. I just really think it's so cool how much this module changes in general. Every time that I've played Fall Flavors so far, I have actually played with Fall Fruit. The only time that I've done a module on its own other than the Sunset Tracker is the Fall Fruit expansion, because anytime I busted out any of these, I did this as well. I couldn't resist. It's too good. It's so much fun. And I will also say that I have played all of these modules separately, quote-unquote. Obviously, I played with the Fall Fruit every time and had to use the Sunset Tracker as well. But I have played with them all basically individually to test them out, and then at the end, I just did one chaos game where I had every module in play at once, and let me tell you, that was a huge blast. But there's just so much variability with how you can mix and match these. If I'm in the mood for it that day, I could do Fall Fruit and Nectar Caps. Maybe I'm feeling like doing the Autumn Leaves and the Harvest Festival. Maybe I want to throw 3 in together, or maybe I want to play everything but the Nectar Caps. The world is your oyster when it comes to this, because you can just pick and choose how you want to enjoy Honey Buzz. It's no longer just what you get in the box is what you get. Now you get to actually pick and choose what you use. Of course, with the exception of the Sunset Tracker, because if any of these modules are in play, this is in play, and you know how it is. But as far as things go, if you enjoy base Honeybuzz, if you've gotten to explore base Honeybuzz and appreciate it and love it for what it is, this expansion takes the game to a whole new level. Honeybuzz has been in my top 10 games of all time pretty much since I got it, and I played it quite a bit. I loved the game to death. It did start to get just slightly stale. It never really felt samey for me. It always was just different enough on the base game plays. But there were a lot of times where I was like, maybe I'm not quite in the mood for playing this right now. It feels like, it's Honeybuzz. I know what to expect out of it, but with this, there are no expectations anymore. I know that every game is just going to be complete and utter chaos, and no two plays will ever be identical ever again, as long as any of these modules are in play. And for that versatility and that ability to just, again, not really change the core identity of Honeybuzz, it's still there. It's still living and breathing and functioning great. Now it just gets some extra fashion. It went to a beauty show, it got to try on everything, and it's in its best colors. This is an absolute 10 out of 10 expansion. Elf Creek totally killed it with this. I don't even think I really have any gripes on any of these modules specifically. Of course, the biggest one I would say is with the Harvest Festival, just with the drones totally killing me on the toast cards, but that's part of it. You need to have the competition, so I'm not mad about that. It still captures that perfect cozy vibe of Honeybuzz in a fall form. The aesthetics are always gorgeous with these games. So the vibe is perfect, the coziness is perfect, that just slight edge of competitiveness is still there, but it's not any sort of competitiveness that's going to make anyone feel bad on the other end of it. It's just such a pleasant time. This is my ideal game. This is everything I want out of a board game in general, and it introduces all of these mechanics in such a fun way that, again, don't change the core of the game. It's just like as if Honeybuzz put on an outfit, but you can still clearly tell who it is, and everything just hits the right spot for me. This game is so delicious. Again, if you love and appreciate base Honeybuzz, I cannot recommend this expansion enough. If you've never played Honeybuzz, obviously check out the review again and try it first. Play Honeybuzz first, see if you like the base game, because, like I said, since this doesn't take away any of the identity of Honeybuzz, if you don't like the core of Honeybuzz itself, this module or these expansions are not going to fix that for you. You really do need to like the base game first to actually appreciate and enjoy this one, I feel. As it really should be with any expansion, but there are some cases I know where expansions do tend to kind of fix games and make them feel complete. I would say that this just goes beyond what Honeybuzz is rather than completing it. To me, Honeybuzz was already a complete game. It was already fantastic on its own, and this really just took it up to that next level. And I cannot recommend it enough for the Honeybuzz enjoyers. But again, if you do not like base Honeybuzz, this is not worth your time. Don't even bother looking at it. And again, these extra mini expansions are just quality of life upgrades. If you enjoy the game, again, it's something that I feel personally is worth it. Especially the fall player pieces, and the cornucopia added quite a bit too. Both of these, to me, were mandatory because of how much I already love this game. Again, it's in my top 10 games of all time. I am never going to miss splurging on a game like this. But there are a lot of games where if I was presented with something like this, I'd be a little more skeptical and be like, I want to know how much I actually like the game first before I get into that. So definitely by no means are these actually a must-have or something you need to rush to get. They're just extra options that are here in case you want them. But I would definitely recommend going for the expansion first, going for actual fall flavors, and then considering adding these on later. Same thing with the Honey Pot mini expansion, which I do also have, and I don't play with a whole lot, but it did come with some nice stuff in there as well. So keep these in mind. Don't disregard them, I would say, but don't rush to get them right away. Get your experiences with Honeybuzz and fall flavors first before really worrying too much about these, but thankfully these are also not very expensive. So just keep your budget in mind, be wary as always, and know where you're spending your money and if it's actually going to be worth it for you. The biggest thing I can always say with that is just research, research, research. So anyways, guys, that's it for my review today of Honey Buzz Fall Flavors. Absolute 10 out of 10 on every module. Elf Creek just, oh, they destroyed it. It's out of the park, amazing. Absolutely love it with every fiber of my being. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you've played Fall Flavors and you have your own opinion on it, I'd love to hear it down in the comments. I always enjoy hearing what you guys think. And as always, guys, we hope you enjoy your stay, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace out.